being able to take something prior to a meal in order to reduce how much you eat seems almost bad or almost too futuristic, but there's some interesting mechanisms in which it's doable. There's some evidence now that taking like 2 or 3 grams of spirulina prior to a meal could be really powerful at reducing gastric emptying. I'll explain what all that means. And I like to give the answer right up front. I don't like to dangle the carrot. I know that's kind of how YouTube can work sometimes, but I feel like people are in a rush. Sometimes they just want to know the answer and maybe they'll come back later and watch the video. I just like to be respectful of people's time, but if you can and you do have the time, please do stick around and learn how this works so that I can kind of teach you how to use it and when to not use it, because there are practical applications with everything and a good side and a bad side. So hear me out on the entire thing. I put a link down below for 30% off your entire first order with Thrive Market. Thrive Market focuses on the ingredient quality. That's why getting 30% off your first order with them is awesome. If you go to the grocery store, the reality is you have to spend a lot of time and you need a practical PhD to really read the ingredients, to really understand and cross-referencing. Thrive Market does that already. They do not have garbage ingredients coming into the food that they have on their digital shelves, so to speak. So the reason that I trust Thrive Market is because I know that even if I'm getting something that's like a sweet treat or something that I want to enjoy that's even a snack, at least I don't have to worry about having low quality ingredients. And you can sort by different diet type. I spent a lot of time in Europe recently and I was just almost in love with the food quality there. And the thing that I like about Thrive is they do a good job of emulating the kind of food quality that's coming into the foods that they have. So that link down below gets you 30% off. It gets delivered right to your doorstep and you get a free $60 gift with any purchase. So go ahead and check them out. It's in the top line of the description underneath this video. When you're looking at how, for example, something like Ozempic works, Ozempic is a GLP-1 receptor agonist. And one of the main ways that it slows down how much people eat is it actually slows down gastric emptying. Now, that is an effect of GLP-1 directly. Like the gastric emptying slows down and food stays in the system literally longer. That's why sometimes people get bad breath or weird burps or even nausea, right? Well, spirulina isn't working along the GLP-1 pathway, but it's working along what is called cholecystokinin. When you take in spirulina, it actually triggers a release of CCK, cholecystokinin, which is actually released when people have like fatty foods. So, and fatty foods being good, bad, or ugly fatty foods, just fatty foods in general, it is a response also with bile. So essentially when you have fat coming in your diet, CCK is released and it blunts your appetite. The hard part is that usually fats are so calorically dense by the time that CCK actually elevates, you've already consumed too much calories in a lot of cases. Anyway, just making some sense of all of this. But I'm going to jump right into like what makes spirulina particularly unique. There's a couple of things. For one, there is something that's called phenylalanine that's in spirulina. It's very high in spirulina. And that is a precursor to dopamine and a precursor to epinephrine. Now, these are two neurotransmitters that when activated will actually blunt your appetite if you're actually scratching the itch that you set out to scratch, right? So imagine getting a dopamine hit from something and having it just be satisfied, right? Normally you get a dopamine hit and then you crash and you need more. Okay, with spirulina, since it's a precursor, this phenylalanine, to dopamine and to norepinephrine, you're actually supporting your dopamine and epinephrine levels, so then your brain is a little bit more satiated. But that's completely separate and apart from like the other context. The other context is the gastric side, which is more, quite honestly, eerily similar to Ozempic in a lot of ways, because it's almost like an impromptu, immediate push button type of Ozempic that's definitely not as powerful, for sure, but it's more single use, right? So let's say you're going out to eat, you're excited, you're gonna go meet with some friends, you wanna have some good food. Well, that would be a good time to maybe take 3 grams of spirulina, because by the time you actually get into the restaurant, you could have a release in cholecystokinin that's actually delaying gastric emptying. So when you start eating, you're actually getting satiated a little bit faster. So you might waste some money in food, but you might end up being in a spot where you don't eat quite as much. It's actually a very potent appetite suppressant. Now, it's not something that you would want to take like just randomly to curb your appetite ahead of time. For something like that, I usually recommend like just salt, right? Now, that's really, really awesome. Spirulina, we're talking more about like an immediate sort of gastric emptying effect. So slightly different use case, which again, I'll kind of explain and clarify it all here in just a moment. But from the salt perspective, it's kind of funny because we get a lot of sodium in our diet, but 70% of the sodium that most people in America get is actually from processed food. It's not even coming from like a good good quality source of sodium intentionally. Now, from the gastric emptying side, that will definitely get you to eat less, but then there's also really cool evidence that it actually spirulina increases fatty acid oxidation, which could play a role in why it suppresses the appetite so much. It's kind of like when people are on a low carb diet or a ketogenic diet, they claim that their appetite is significantly less. And that's just because now their body is using their fat as a gauge for what fuel is on hand. And if there's body fat on hand, the body's going to say, well, we're cool, we've got body fat. So leptin levels stabilize, the body starts to burn fat, and it doesn't get as hungry. If you use something like spirulina, you start increasing the enzymes that allow the mitochondria to use those fats better. I'm not saying it's magically going to make you like burn fat all the time. It's not a thermogenic, but it's fascinating with how it increases mitochondrial efficiency, and at the mitochondrial level, even red blood cell level, ability to utilize oxygen and burn fat better. But you couple that with the appetite suppressant effect, very fascinating. So here's what I would do. I would say prior to lunch or dinner, usually lunch, I would do about 3 grams of spirulina. Whatever your biggest meal of the day that you have a hard time controlling yourself with. It could even be prior to coming home from work before you raid the pantry like I do when I get home, right? I would say you could have it prior to breakfast, but I don't really think having it fasted technically would break a fast. Although if you took it pre-workout, you get these benefits of like nitric oxide production and workout performance. So you could take it fasted, but if you're really looking for that appetite suppressant, you want to do it like 3-4 grams right before a good hearty meal. Give it a chance to absorb, give it maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes to delay that gastric emptying and increase those CCK levels. That's going to make it so you want to eat less. So again, you could take more and it can have potentially a stronger effect, but again, that 3 grams seems to be the sweet spot there. So it's like, keep it with you, don't use it every single meal. It's nutritious though. It is high in B6, B12, which helps with energy manufacturing, super high in iron and magnesium, 70% protein. This stuff is good. Just use it strategically because we're not trying to like replace Ozempic here. We're trying to go for like a shot of utilization at one particular point in time. So as always, please keep it locked in here on my channel. I'll see you tomorrow.